We all know phones, tablets, laptops, things like that. So that's what we normally think of. But then, well, what about part of the mobile story is consumerization, where we're all bringing things into the office that we didn't do before. I know sitting on the table over there where I'm sitting are 3 devices, none of which Trend Micro supplied me with. It's what I travel with, it's what I use, and it's how I get my job done. And that, of course, goes into bring your own device to work as well. All of us are working with that as a part of what we do today. And we can do the, I'm in a regulated industry, this is not allowed sort of thing. And what will happen, and I've seen this over and over at different customers, in fact, great examples in the insurance business in the United States. The marketing department at the insurance company managed to get access to everything they wanted. And then one day, the VP of Human Resources came in and said, you're going to have to allow people to bring their own devices. You're going to have to open things up a lot more than you are. And the security guy said, what are you talking about? This is terribly dangerous. Don't you understand regulations? And the VP of Human Resources said, yeah, don't you understand hiring? We can't hire anyone under 30. No one will come to work here if they can't bring their iDevices with them. They were literally having people say, I don't want to work in that world. I don't even know how to do it. So we are facing this, especially with the next generation of people coming in. The problem is that these definitions are all wrong. Here's why. When you ask people like these, what is on my mobile device? Why do I care? This is actually what you're getting to. And funny enough, every one of these is a cloud service. So when you talk to someone about what is cloud, it really oftentimes isn't what you think it is. Let's look at consumerization for a little bit here, though. A quote from Gartner. The most significant trend for this 10 years. Notice they didn't pick cloud. That was last 10 years, right? And we have this nice evolution. But what's happening now is what's happened many, many times before. How did PCs enter your organization 30 years ago? Well, when the mainframe guys wouldn't do what needed doing, some business person spent $5,000 on a very, very old 286. And what do you know? That's how we got to where we are today. What didn't happen back then that is happening today is this convergence, where what used to be very much a business machine with nice beige plastic is now a little bit different than that Sony or that Mac that people actually covet. The net effect of this, though, is that enterprise vendors who typically had so much power with your organization may lose a little bit of power. And the companies that play well between the consumer side and the business side tend to gain from this. Certainly, end users get more power because they have a vote as to what they bring into your business. And companies like Apple and Google and even Trend Micro, we're one of those companies that spans the gap. We have a very significant consumer business, and we're helping to protect Facebook. We just did an announcement about that, and we have a very large cloud with 100 million endpoints feeding data into it. So the idea that I sell boxes to enterprises and that's my core strength is going to go away because you may not be buying boxes from one place. Let's talk a little bit about the cloud thing. And I can tell you, this slide sort of just makes me tired as a cloud evangelist because we've all been doing this for a couple years. Well, you have infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service, 3 big buckets, private, public, hybrid. By now, I'm guessing all of you have seen this at least once. However, this is also not the right way to look at the cloud. Here's what cloud means to your mother. It means it's not on my computer. It's somewhere else. It turns out this is the most useful definition of the cloud for you to think about in the broadest context. This was driven home to me about 2 weeks ago. I was on a panel at the National Association of Broadcasters. Very, very powerful group of people. 100,000 people show up in Las Vegas at this amazing conference where they're selling antennas and broadcasting things and stuff that, frankly, I don't know very much about. A business at least as big as IT. And on this cloud panel, 80% of the questions from very well-educated, knowledgeable people in the room were, well, it's on his iPad, therefore it's in the cloud. They're thinking about their movie or their song or whatever else it was. So to that entire industry, which is, I think, about as big as our industry in IT, the definition of the cloud is your mother's definition of the cloud, not our definition of the cloud. So when you're thinking about the cloud and consumerization, you need to sort of get your head out of the clouds and look at what your end users are thinking the cloud is, and think about how this will affect your IT. The good thing is, we've seen this before. We started out back in the day with mainframes. And suddenly we said, let's shift towards PCs. And then we said, that was too far. Let's do client server where some sits here and some sits there. We went a little further, and we went to the web. Well, let's put everything in a data center, and you can have basically a green screen to look at it, just like we did a long time ago. But now, we went to Web 2.0, where we said, that's kind of too bad. Let's have your browser kind of do some smart things, much like client server did 15 years before that. But now look where we got. We got to the point where we're mostly distributed. Your data is all over the place with mobile and cloud. And we're now moving towards this further direction where it's hybrid, and we're able to say, we're going to ambient clouds. And I'll talk a little bit about what that means. But the ambient cloud is what brings together consumerization in mobile devices and traditional views of cloud computing. And that red line there represents about where we are in terms of progression along this chart. The final one there, Skynet. I have to be careful. I knew you guys would understand that. Some audiences, Skynet, what's that? So if you don't know, watch Terminator. Here's the world's biggest cloud, at least the recipe for building the world's biggest cloud. About a couple billion PCs, give or take. 7 billion people, and we're on a fast track to putting a smartphone in the hands of just about everyone. That's a lot of compute capacity, a lot of bandwidth. We've got 512 core systems coming to put in our data centers. Tablets all over the place with 4G. If you link all that together, we call that the internet. You actually have a really, really big cloud. It turns out, though, if you build a cloud on top of that type of environment, you end up with different characteristics than the clouds you're used to today. You're used to a cloud where you scale the cloud. The new clouds that are coming scale themselves. That means when someone turns on a machine that's hooked up to your cloud, whether that machine is a mobile phone or a laptop, it doesn't really matter. When it gets turned on, it's part of your cloud, and you have access to some capabilities on it. Your management of your clouds will itself be cloud-based. Typically, if you're running a private cloud today, what we do is you have your own management console, and it almost certainly runs locally. And even if you're doing things in a public cloud, you usually manage it locally. And we tend to try and hold on and grasp control of our management servers. Well, when you're managing a cloud that's ambient, that comes and goes at will, but you manage what you can get, everything resides in the cloud. Your performance monitoring isn't as good as what you have today. If you have a cloud where, let's see, for my employees, this portion of my app runs on their mobile phones. Well, you might not even be able to query a mobile phone at any one time to know how it's doing. So you end up playing statistics games for performance monitoring more than you do today. Job scheduling becomes a little bit weird. And storage is totally different. There are companies today who will allow you to give them, say, 100 gigs of space on your server or on your PC. And in return, they'll give you 100 gigs of cloud storage. But their cloud is actually built out of other people's machines as well. So instead of having a data center full of EMC or NetApp or God knows what other kinds of consumer-based hard drives they're cobbling storage out of, they're saying, why don't we share this? So your data then gets carved into tiny pieces, gets encrypted, and gets spread across thousands of other computers. It turns out your availability is extremely good when you do that, and your security is quite good, but maybe not quite as perfect. That's debatable. But the idea there that for you as an enterprise, one of your employees today may have taken your most important data, downloaded it, subscribed to the service, and spread your data across 1,000 machines in encrypted chunks may be a little scary. And that's the sort of thing that we need to get our heads around when we look at the future of cloud and consumer.